As human beings, we are created with desires. We all long for meaningful relationships, for lives that reflect goodness, for engagement with beauty, and for the freedom to pursue our lives with integrity. But where can our restless hearts find fulfillment for these universal longings? I think our widely shared human aspirations are best understood and explained in the light of the Christian story. All throughout these videos, or unless you're just listening to me, you're going to hear me comparing and contrasting Christianity with mostly secularism, essentially, with occasional reference to other religions, by comparing and contrasting how these things seek to provide meaning, satisfaction, freedom, identity, a moral compass, and hope. All things so crucial that we cannot live life without them. I maintain that Christianity makes the most emotional and cultural sense, that it explains these life issues in the most insightful and potent ways, and that it gives us unmatched resources for meeting these inescapable human needs. I start there because I think that most people do not care whether or not Christianity is true. They are already convinced that it is a story that hinders their flourishing, rather than a story that secures and promotes human flourishing. What is startling is the fact that the things most human beings care most about fit better within the Christian story than they do in the various atheistic stories. Once we see this connection, we see that we want the Christian story to be true. Of course, the fact that we want it to be true does not show that it is true. But once a person wants it to be true, I think the objections and stumbling blocks to the truth of it seem much smaller. If you think Christianity doesn't hold much promise of making sense to a thinking person, then these videos are definitely made for you. If you have friends or family who feel this way, this should be of interest to you as well. If you claim to be a believer but struggle with doubt, never really fully putting both feet in or out, or you wonder if the way you live your life is often at odds with what you claim to believe, and you struggle to put a consistent foundation to what you believe and why, then this can be of interest to you too. For the believer who desires to be better articulate in the reason for the hope that you have in you, for the one sitting somewhere on the borderlands between belief and unbelief, well, I invite you to come along as well. When I started delving into these kinds of subjects, I remember realizing that both in my younger years, which wasn't all that long ago, and in those years, even when I was going to church, and in the subsequent years in which I essentially lived like an atheist, I have really looked... I never really looked this carefully at my foundations. I'd been too influenced by my surroundings. I hadn't thought things out for myself. The opportunity to finally do so blessed me beyond comparison. Only a short number of years back, I remember that I wasn't really looking for answers. I didn't really have the desire to. In fact, I thought I already had all the answers. I was content enough with myself. I was unsatisfied with many things in life, sure, but I just figured I only needed to will myself in a certain direction, and that surely luck will pull things together for me. Along the way, though, something stopped me in my tracks. I moved from an arrogant certainty about my life to a certainty related to my own desperate fallen nature. Life on this side of my decision hasn't always been easy. It's been a few years, but I still struggle to submit myself, my prideful will, to what God would call me to do. Christianity is not easy. It doesn't always work for me. There are times when I think, boy, it would be easier to go back to doing things the old way. There are many times when doing the right thing means doing the most difficult thing possible. There are also times when it seems like non-Christians have it much easier. It's in times like these that I have to remind myself that I'm not a Christian because it serves my own selfish purposes. I'm not a Christian because it works for me. I had a life prior to Christianity that seemed to be working just fine. I'll use one of my favorite quotes from former atheist turned Christian Jim Warner Wallace. He said, "I'm a Christian because it's true. I'm a Christian because I want to live in a way that reflects the truth. I'm a Christian because my high regard for the truth leaves me no alternative."